Hey everybody, my name is Rich Marcosian. Welcome to the Utah Story Show. So today's episode is going to be quite a bit different. It's kind of going to be like a behind the scenes look at what we've done in the past year. Just a little bit of background if you're new to the channel or the show. I'm the publisher of Utah Stories magazine, and this is a magazine I've been publishing for 10 years. We celebrated our 10-year anniversary. That was a pretty big accomplishment this year. And I want to talk about how to navigate the media in 2020 and delve into some of my insights in what I've sort of discovered in 10 years of covering hyper-local news and journalism, and share with you how I feel you can become a better media news consumer. And with a little bit of background, so I got into journalism kind of later in life. I decided at a young age I wanted to go into media. I worked at a training company as a computer graphic artist and animator. And then I decided that I really began to appreciate the written word and the power of the pen. And I started studying things like history quite a bit. And I just saw that the biggest impacts that people have had on history really did their greatest work or had the greatest impact through the power of the written word. And if you look at the past and how history has been shaped, you'll see what I mean by that. One of the best books I think I've ever read was Uncle Tom's Cabin, and it was written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, and it really shifted the whole entire tide of race relations and the whole idea of slavery. Really, when President Lincoln said to her, "You're the woman who started this great war," it was not inaccurate at all. That because of that book, the entire tide of how the northern colonies felt about slavery completely shifted, and we were no longer going to be able to have slave states and free states. That the entire nation had to be emancipated. So without going too deep into that, I decided I really wanted to be a journalism and affect change on a local level by just basically showing people how I navigate the world and how I perceive the world, and then ask questions and delve into those questions and attempt to find answers. And a lot of what I feel like I do has to do with trying to find answers to very difficult questions, but also highlight the best of local Utah. And in doing so, we present in our magazine stories of farmers, entrepreneurs, people who have decided they want to set their own course in life. They want to not be a victim to anybody else, but try to create their own streams of revenue, to create their own business, to create their own lifestyle. I think some of what we do falls in line with the whole idea of lifestyle entrepreneurship, where it's not so much about just earning a ton of money by starting a business, but it's more about creating the lifestyle that you feel gives you the most self-reliance and gives you the most power to affect change and be the change that you want to see in this world. And so with that, we had our big Made in Utah festival, and it was super great to see some of you come out to that and say hello to me. I kind of feel like the growth of this podcast has been quite slow and steady. You know, we had 1 month where we doubled up viewership, but that still was not a huge number of viewers. But it's really cool to see that a lot of you are sharing this now, and it's resonating with a few people. And we've had such awesome guests on the show. I just feel honored to have so many people on the show, that we've been able to tackle things like air quality and the environment and pollution, and how and why the real estate market in Utah is just going gangbusters, what we can do about affordable housing. Last year we had 2 mayoral candidates on. This program has been dedicated to basically helping preserve the quality of life that we have in Utah. We are all here for a reason. A lot of us have Mormon pioneer ancestry. While I'm not a Mormon myself, a lot of my ancestors were Mormon pioneers. We honor and cherish that pioneer spirit in that the pioneers came out west because they wanted to enjoy a different quality of life than what they could have back east. And that quality of life was trying to create more cooperation, trying to create more community, and basically becoming more self-reliant. And I think it's that in that same exact spirit that we've launched Utah Stories and launched this podcast, and that we want to present, these really great stories to you. And so it's been awesome. I think this podcast has probably been the highlight of my year as far as what I'm doing. The magazine is, great. And if you know the story of how we launched the magazine, I started it as a blog, and eventually I realized it would be better off if we had it in a magazine print form. Not a lot of people go from being a blog to a magazine, but I really found that the very best way to get the most readers in a small geographic area when we launched was print. There was nothing that compared to that at that time in 2009 when we launched. And I think still to this day, I don't think that any of the social media platforms offer the same level of a user experience like print does. I mean, you open up this magazine and you see nothing but local ads, which you can choose to read or you can choose not to read. You see a nice index with the stories that you can choose to read. You see who our contributors are. I'm really proud of this issue because it's got a lot of awesome stories in it, and it's got just such awesome advertisers in it as well. Also, just a nice little thing that happened this last year. I won first place in the magazine feature contest for the Society of Professional Journalism for a story I did on the Bangater farm back in 2018. But that was quite an honor to receive that award because I really do love writing, and I love more than anything going out and producing these stories. And so now I wrote a little essay that was going to appear in our January issue, How to Navigate and Become a Better Media Consumer. And that's what I want to go into next. And so what I do sometimes, I go home, I sit in my basement, I watch some TV, I turn on Fox News, and then I turn on CNN, and then I'll turn on MSNBC, and I notice after 10, 15 minutes of watching those stations, I really feel quite depressed. Especially, I have to say, CNN and MSNBC, just the way they interpret everything that's going on in this country and in this world. You would just think we live in terrible times. You would think that we live in an awful country. And no matter what you happen to think about our president, the way they report on what's happening, you might as well believe this is like the end of our civilization, because all they have to say is that they cannot believe that this man is our president. Everything that they report on is hysterical. They have these guests on and these pundits who are just in outrage all of the time. And I want you to know kind of what's really going on here when you're watching those kinds of pundits and those stories that are on places like CNN and MSNBC and also sometimes Fox News. They are losing ratings dramatically. If you didn't notice, a lot of people are just cutting the cord on cable television altogether, and they're just watching YouTube, and they're watching Netflix, and they're watching Amazon Prime and Hulu, and those cable television news stations, they are dying to keep their audiences, and they're trying to do everything in their power to keep those eyeballs. And in so doing, they have to sensationalize the news constantly. If there's not some terrible thing they can report on, they know you're going to flip the station. And so they just have to have a constant stream of hysterical people that just make you feel like the whole world sucks. But let's look at reality for a minute. One thing that's not reported on in the news at all is that in the last 10 years, sub-Saharan African countries, India and Southeast Asia, has seen a dramatic decline in overall rates of poverty. It's almost like poverty at the lowest levels has been eradicated. And as that's been happening, the levels of environmental quality in those places, like those are the places where the river and the water quality and the levels of people getting tuberculosis and severe diarrhea from malaria is just terrible. But as these places get lifted out of poverty, the environment in those places improves absolutely dramatically. I would suggest you just Google it, poverty rates in sub-Saharan Africa, or poverty rates and environmental quality improvement in places like Southeast Asia. And the greatest thing that can happen as people are lifted out of poverty is that the environment in those places improves. The reason why we have thousands and thousands of tons of plastic in our oceans is not because we in the United States are throwing away so much plastic. It's because most of that plastic, 85%, I saw in the TED Talk, is coming from Southeast Asia and India. And it's going into their rivers and it's ending up in the ocean. That's why our oceans are getting these massive dead zones full of plastic. It's because of the most impoverished nations. And if those places continue to get lifted out of poverty, we can see the environmental impact of poverty be lessened, and we can see dramatic improvements. And that's something not being reported on. And so, all of the good news that's out there is that poverty probably within the next 2 decades will be completely obliterated if we continue on the trajectory we're on. If more and more people have access to a fair and free market, they'll use their intellect and they'll use their motor skills to create products to add to the free market and sell more goods, and there will be less oppression and repression. And it's just a great thing that's happening all across the world. And you're not going to hear about that from the mainstream media because obviously that doesn't gain enough readership or listenership or eyeballs or attention. And so I suggest you turn off your CNN. I suggest you turn off MSNBC and Fox News for the most part and introduce yourself to what's called the intellectual dark web. And you're probably already a part of it now if you're listening to this as a podcast or you're watching the YouTube channel. The intellectual dark web, if you don't know, consists of about 7 or 8 people, and the term was coined, I believe, in an Atlantic magazine article. And it's basically these group of guys who have created content and podcasts who have gained a unique following because all of these guys are not partisan. They're not out to create agenda-driven news, as you find so often. Most of these news stations, they know they're catering to the right, they know they're catering to the left, and that's the kind of content they produce. But if you look at what, for example, Jordan Peterson is producing, he's definitely not left or right. He's probably want to be deemed by the liberal media as being something more of a conservative. But there's also guys like Sam Harris, who's absolutely not right-leaning at all, but he's far more objective in his analysis of different things that are happening in the world. Ben Shapiro, he's more of a conservative for sure, but he's also far more objective about the way he covers things and the way he interprets the world and the media sources that are out there. And, of course, Joe Rogan. I absolutely love Joe Rogan's podcast. I think he does an amazing job in just creating a very entertaining but at the same time educational set of stories and the people he covers and what he does out there, because I think that if you're going to gain the type of audience that he has, he's now the most influential interviewer that's ever existed in all time. He has something like 4 million downloads of each podcast and each YouTube video that he creates. And I just think this is the greatest thing that's ever happened I mean, in terms of media dissemination and accuracy and truth dissemination. And if you just simply decide to unplug the CNN and the Fox News and the MSNBC, you will definitely become a happier person. And I would also suggest, as a media consumer, subscribe to your local newspaper. And I know a lot of these newspapers, they're free. You can get all the content you want. But I know a lot of journalists, and I know how difficult it is to survive, and I know what a difficult job they have in doing their work. And I think that if more people simply subscribed and supported local journalism, the whole world would be a better place, because the local news media used to be known as the fourth estate. And by that, they meant that we have the three branches of government, and they all kind of check and balance each other. But who has always checked and balanced the three branches of government? It's always been the fourth estate, the local or the news media that does muckraking, that does investigative journalism, that asks the questions, that delves deeper into how and why they're doing what they're doing, where they get their money. That's the type of journalism we really hope to do more of here at Utah Stories. And that's the type of journalism I hope more people support, because corruption is running rampant in this country. Nobody can deny that. Special interests have extreme amounts of power over our political leaders. We covered the inland port here quite extensively, and there's no better example in Utah of just extreme special interest power deciding that some very stupid, asinine idea would get passed than what we see with the inland port. There's nobody I know who wants this port to happen, that feels like we need more semi-trucks on our roads, that we need more pollution in our air, that sees we need more longshoreman jobs. Yet this inland port is moving forward because our political leaders are run by special interest powers, and those powers want to see it happen. And so I love to see when there's groundswells of grassroots support against things like the inland port, because it shows that there's a good dissemination of information happening. But when the inland port just simply continues to move forward and there's not enough support against it to stop it, obviously our world in Utah is becoming worse of a place, and it's not happy. It's not a good thing to see. And so with that said, I think that's about it. I want to wish everybody a happy new year. I really want to thank everybody for your support. I really feel so grateful to be able to put this show on, to be able to put this magazine out, to do what I want with my life, to be able to go out and do the type of reporting and stories that I feel are fulfilling to me. I don't have to go out and chase celebrities. I don't have to go and do really stupid stories about lame crap like most journalists do. I can actually just give great assignments to writers who I really appreciate and enjoy the work that they do. We have so many awesome writers here at Utah Stories. I won't name them all, but they're always in the front of this magazine. And I want to point out something that we're doing that we started last year. It's this Made in Utah gift box. If you haven't seen this, it's a really awesome box, and it's full of these all locally made products. That's Chocolate Conspiracy coffee, if you can see that. It's not quite focusing. And this is Daily Rise coffee. I absolutely love this locally roasted coffee, and I really like the people who own it, named Jeff and Beth. And this is Paisley's beef jerky, and this is beef jerky that's made from grass-fed beef from Torrey, Utah. It's really excellent beef jerky. Then we've got some Petras, Backsputen, Henny cookies, and caramels from Julienne Caramels. And we've only got like 15 boxes of these left. We'll just give them away to our advertisers if we don't sell them. But if you happen to want one of these, we're going to be selling them. You can buy one box for $35, and you can help support local journalism that way too. And, you know, it's just a lot of great stuff in one box, and I'm happy to sell these to help raise money for our journalism, and we did this at our Made in Utah festival. And we sold a bunch, and we're giving away a bunch to our advertisers, and it's a fun thing that we do. So if you'd like one of these, go visit utahstories.com, and we will put up a link where you can buy one. And that link will be up about January 2nd. And so the last little plug I wanted to give, we're doing Cheers to Beers all month long. We didn't do it in December like we'd hoped because the festival just got too busy. But I want to tell you to go out and try Uinta's Brewing Company. This is called Yard Sale Winter Lager. They are one of the sponsors of our Cheers to Beers section because we're all giving a big cheers to beers because in Utah, if you didn't know, for the last, since Prohibition, I'd say 70 years, we've had 3.2 alcohol by volume was the limit of the amount of alcohol allowed in the beer that you could buy at the supermarket. And 3.2 beer, I actually found out, was considered alcohol-free beer. That it's such a low level that it was considered practically alcohol without, or beer without any alcohol. And now you can buy beer with 5% alcohol. And so we're celebrating that by drinking beer, and we don't have to drink so much to, get a nice little buzz off of it. And so this is one of my favorite beers, especially to drink in the wintertime. Uinta Yard Sale. So go out and buy some. And I think that's about it. We've got 2 awesome podcasts coming out in the next couple of weeks. We've got one where I speak to Soren Simonson about smart growth. We've got another one coming out a week after that of the president of the Young Society. It's Mikhail. And a really interesting conversation about dreams, interpreting your dreams, interpreting how to understand your own inner psyche better from the lessons of Carl Jung. And the Young Society is this really amazing organization. And so I suggest you become a member or a subscriber to the Utah Stories podcast, because then you can find out about all of our upcoming podcasts, and you can get alerted every time a new podcast comes out. And I think that's it. So again, have a happy new year. Enjoy your 2020, and thank you very much for watching. See you next time.